What was the first technique that became really reliable for you? Triangle?
I would say the triangle choke. Okay. Yeah, with my legs, definitely triangle choke. Arm lock, that took a while, and then a loop choke. Just being able to push the guy's head into the basket and choke him. That was a lot easier it was more about timing than power.
What's your setup to the loop choke? You bring yourself to the person? Because
Usually they give it to me because they drive with their head. Usually I use it against wrestlers, against people that are passing the guard and just sticking their head forward and burying down, hips up, head down. It's perfect. I can also kick out a knee. Right. And then they drop down. They got to get that knee back up before they can move into a better position. So I call that -1. I'm at, so they're one step behind. If we're at 0-0, I kick out their knee, they're at -1. They got to come back to 0 before they can advance.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I wish there were a magic spreadsheet that would increment every time you hit something so you could go back and see, because you have sort of an intuitive sense for what you hit the most.
Yeah.
What are your top 5, top 10 techniques? But
that's changed. Now I probably hit Kimura from top half guard more than anything. Yeah, I do a lot of arm locks and a lot of chokes, but Kimuras, I get a lot of Kimuras. And from top half guard, it's irresistible. It's there. I don't need to even pass the guard, and I can go right into it. And you don't have to, I don't know, it's always there. And that leads to familiar movement patterns and submission patterns. But if you just linger in your A game all the time, you aren't growing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of students get frustrated. I know I've gotten frustrated throughout the journey because you hit a wall, you hit a plateau, and it feels like nothing's working. But sometimes it's because you got bored with the thing that was working and you don't have that next thing yet. And so you have to suffer a little to get that next thing. And you have to be a little patient with yourself, knowing that in the short term, maybe you're not as effective.
Yeah. But if you have good role models in the academy that allow themselves to be vulnerable, and you see them working on stuff, and if they're working on stuff, they're going to get tapped. I remember he was one of the early purple belts at Claudio's. His name was Stan Kendrick, and very tough guy, prison guard, super tough, ex-bodybuilder, fearsome. And he tried something and I arm locked him and he tapped so early. He was like, "Oh, that was great. He didn't have to say he was trying something, but I knew that he was trying something, and it was good. And that was the model of humility, where it's like, he could have smashed me, but he was working on something. He allowed me to do my thing. I learned something. He learned something, and it's just training. It wasn't a big deal.
I think it's really important for more advanced students to be able to read the opponent. They're less skilled. What can I give them to create a challenge for them, but it's not insurmountable for them. I can give them an opportunity to grow, and in doing so I can give myself an opportunity to grow because I'm exploring things in a way that...
Exactly.
I think there's so much ego sometimes that people don't want to play it that way.
Of course, yeah. I think that's a very strong point. There's a lot of lessons in getting vulnerable and allowing yourself to be tapped.
And that's harder for big, strong athletes.
Definitely. Well, I mean, some guys,
not all of them, but sometimes you have success early. If you walk in, you're big, strong, tough. You can have some success early, despite.
I think that's where an instructor needs to tell them, okay, I want you to emulate like a little guy's game.
I preach that. I've got a couple guys that These guys are studs, man. And they're tough. They're tough for me. They're very difficult. One guy, I have a hard time passing his guard. He's still a white belt. And he's got a very difficult guard to pass, you know. And I tell him, you know, don't get intoxicated by the fact that you can tap most everybody in this room already. Don't get intoxicated by that. You want to be able to go deeper, way deeper with the technique.
Well, and that fades inevitably. That will fade where someone doesn't play this game. They have an unorthodox game. Just totally thwarts his A game, and a lot of those guys get crushed emotionally.
Yeah.
When they're like, "Whoa, everything I thought I knew." We all go through that, but if you have many early small setbacks, you're tempered for it. You know, your spirit is resilient enough to be able to absorb it and be like, "Oh, okay." But for someone when they have so much success and so little failure, and then they have a big failure where they don't have any answers, and they're in limbo, and they drown. You know?
Yeah, failure, you know, I think it's so important. The thing about jiu-jitsu, failure is baked into the cake. Because you're going to fail more than you're going to have success. And you just have to embrace that. And it's difficult. I have nights, I still go home. I have nights where
Every day's different. Every day's different. You can have an amazing night. You can have a night where
I have terrible nights where I go home and I'm like, why am I even doing this? You know, even now, you have always been drawn to the grappling arts.
Yeah.
Now, was that, you know, your early influences, judo? Was it maybe because that's where you started and you continued, or was there something about the grappling arts that has resonated? Because you haven't really jumped into the striking arts very much.
Not really. I did karate when I was a kid, really a kid, for maybe a year. And then when I was in college, I did taekwondo. And I've done a little bit, and as part of the Japanese jiu-jitsu, they have a striking component. So I've done a little bit, but I really was just not, I don't know, I just wasn't into it. I felt like I needed to get better at the grappling. I need to get better at the grappling. You need to get better at the grappling. And now, and I've taken a couple of boxing privates and I liked it, but I'm at an age now where it just doesn't make a lot of sense. If I had to hit someone, I could probably hit them, not in an expert way, but enough to maybe take their attention and then be able to utilize my grappling a little bit better. My current level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is enough for most situations. It's enough.
It's more.
Is it perfect for every situation? I mean, yeah, it's more than enough. It's more than enough. On the other hand, being able to have the right tool for every situation would be nice. But I'm okay with just a general, Swiss Army knife.
Speaking of self-defense, so David Camarillo
Yeah.
made a post that said sport jiu-jitsu is self-defense jiu-jitsu. Now, I agree with that. What's your take?
Well, yes, because, there are pros and cons to competition jiu-jitsu applied to self-defense. Number one, when it comes to aggression and desensitization from oncoming pressures, an onslaught of aggression, and you can survive it, and be able to turn the tables and come back, that's mental fortitude that most people don't develop unless they're in some kind of competitive crucible or arena. On the other hand, particularly with the leg game in jiu-jitsu, you reduce your own mobility greatly by immobilizing them. You need two of your legs to immobilize one of their legs, or both of their legs. So you develop these very, very sophisticated answers to very difficult questions in a competitive arena. But no one's asking those questions out in the street. So incredible answers that are correct, but in a way the problem doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Only in a very, very specific arena. So it can give you good answers. Those answers aren't always applicable. But if you get into the attribute development, that's where the magic of competitive jiu-jitsu is.
Yeah, I agree with that, because the desensitization to being smashed, being able to think clearly, being able to problem solve, having felt that a million times before. Someone's trying to choke you, trying to...
Intuitive body movement. I'll do whatever's appropriate given the configuration of his body and my body, with the idea of de-escalating the situation. You know, mirroring his level of aggression and maybe going one step beyond, or maybe even being one step below, but just having superior mechanics to be able to guide him and lower his aggression level. I can do either one intuitively with whatever you give me, whatever body position, because I've tried so many times. I've trained hundreds and hundreds of hours where people get whatever grip they want, whatever they want, and you just go from there. And that's the problem solving. You give me the problem, I'll solve that Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, I play a little game these days a lot, because I'm not as young as I used to be. I play a little game with my students where I will let them start in whatever their best position is, and my only goal is to do as little as absolutely possible and to keep myself from getting tagged. I want to just,
That's Helio Gracie stuff right there. Impregnable defense.
Impregnable defense, and sometimes it's like, you're barely breathing, and they're just huffing and puffing. They're really trying.
Yeah, exactly. I think as a black belt, that field of defensive knowledge becomes much more interesting to you. Defensive movements, defensive postures, and being able to just be calm under duress. That positioning and pre-positioning.
So what would you say to, let's say, blue belts? Most people quit at blue belt for a variety of reasons, and one reason is they're good enough. You're good enough at blue.
You're good enough. You know a couple things.
Yeah, to deal with a self-defense thing, you're probably good enough. You're probably good enough. And blue belt is when you really have to dig deep, man. It's to get to that next level, to be able to...
Blue belt blues.
The blue belt blues.
Yeah.
What do you say to blue belts? How do you keep them on the mat when they're just like,
One, they have to take the thing that they're good at and they know, and then build around it. What comes before, what comes after. So then they start putting their combinations together with what they're already kind of predisposed towards. Then they need to continue to round out their game in a very, very basic way, not in a way like a brown belt getting their black belt, but a blue getting his purple. If you don't know what to do from bottom half guard, you should know one or two things. You got to have one or two things to do from each position. Top half, bottom half. Full guard, inside the guard. Rear mount. What to do offensively, what to do defensively. So, but generally it's about offense. So when it comes to keeping them motivated, I spent 4 years as a blue belt. It was hard. You get the blue belt, and then that's a long time to wait for the next rank. It has to be internally motivated.
Why 4 years? Because that seems like you were a very talented guy. Your movement's always been phenomenal.
I think that maybe Mr. Harris held me to a higher standard. I think he may have held me to a higher standard before promoting me to purple. Because people were telling me for a long time, like, man, you gotta be...
That could be, that Nick Diaz fight you had at blue belt.
Yeah.
you guys looked. There wasn't a lot of pressure. Like when I watch it,
No, I didn't have
you
that then.
you didn't have the pressure game yet, but you had phenomenal movement. You had a killer game.
It was coming together, but it wasn't all there, and that's the incompleteness, right? I didn't have the answer for him, for his guard replacement. I could pass the guard, but I couldn't anchor to his upper body effectively and be able to prevent the re-guarding, especially with his flexibility.
Yeah.
So being able to really have a well-rounded game, you know, it was good, but to get to that next level, I think he held me to a higher standard, and then when I hit purple belt, I was definitely at that level. I was definitely at that level. I won my first tournament. So,
You say being held to a higher standard.
and you do that, and I've done that with people too.
Yeah. I do that. I had a conversation with one of my students who he just grew into his man body young. He showed up at 17. I thought he was an adult. He signed his own waiver. I didn't realize he wasn't a minor until one day everyone said, "Hey, we're going to go have a drink. You want to join us?"
Oh.
And he's just physically gifted.
Yeah.
He said his father was a bodybuilder and just naturally gifted and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he was having a lot of success early on the mat, tapping guys. And he was a little dejected one day, and he came to me and he said, "I'm tapping people. I mean, what's it take to get to blue belt and stuff?" And I told him, it's like, the passage in the Bible. He who has been given much, much is expected. So, and it's sort of that principle where, dude, look at you. Look at what killer physical gifts you have. I'm going to hold you at a higher standard because you have more to give.
Right.
It's easier for you. You're having success, whereas someone else has to really work for that success. So you're going to have to work for it. And maybe that's what Harris saw in you.
Yeah, I came in as a blue belt from Claudio Franza, and my game was Claudio identified early on. He said, "Okay, your issue is passing the guard." And I would float all the time. I had a very movement-oriented, smooth game, but I would float. I didn't really understand how to drop my hips, anchor my weight, pressure against the guy. And the fact that, sometimes really, really close proximity is an advantage. You're safe if you're that close, and you're safe if you're at a specific distance. So when it comes to rounding out my physical abilities, Mr. Harris did a great job. He taught me how to make pressure, create pressure. And I don't know, I would have gotten there eventually, but he gave me both the vocabulary, the awareness, and the direct instruction to really make that.
And that's the game you need as an older athlete.
100%.
Again, last night watching some of these guys roll, beautiful games, beautiful movement, incredible balance, the guard passing and all this stuff. But I can't play that game. I need to get low and
no, you can do it for one or two, like for 2 to 5 moves. You can do that. Yeah. You can do that.
But it can't be it's not a
sustainable.
You have
thing.
to be able to find a point of entry, lock that down. That becomes my, I own this now. Whatever that appendage is, you find a way to control it and then begin working from there.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something to being an older athlete, slowing down, And
it's frustrating. I wish, man, I don't know what it's like. You know what it's like. You were still pretty young. Maybe not in your prime of your youth. You were,
if I had gotten my black belt at 21 instead of 31, it would have been a very different thing. Yeah. I still competed at the World Championships as a 35-year-old in the adult, 33 or 34. And I could feel it. It's a different thing, but I did it to do it. Had I done it when I was 24, it's, I look at people like the Rutolo twins or Nikki Ryan or some of these guys that get top tier physical educations and they're still coming into their physical primes.
Yeah, I'm so jealous of that. I was 42 when I started jiu-jitsu, which is way too late in life,
Not the oldest ever.
Not the oldest ever, but I have this bad habit of being a late bloomer. Everything I've done in my life.
No, that's good. It's good.
And I guess it's okay.
You have a better appreciation for things in some ways.
Well, and I guess, most barriers are self-imposed. I truly believe. And we tell ourselves that we can't do certain things because we're a certain age or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that's BS,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. And so I think if I have one, good quality, it's the willingness
well,
to...
I wouldn't go that far, but continue.
But I've always had the willingness to just do whatever interests me. It kind of doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. I started kind of late in life, but so what? So what?
Exactly.
But I do get a little jealous when I see guys that move beautifully, and I think that would be me. That would be me if I was 25. Right?
But you know what? By starting at 42, you're used to disappointment and heartbreak.
Yeah.
And by having more reasonable expectations for yourself. And the fact that your vehicle is a vehicle of your consciousness, and it's going to break down over time. And it's going to slow down.
And the flip side of that is that jiu-jitsu is one of the few sports, arts, whatever you call it, that you can actually be effective. You can actually tap guys, even as an older athlete. You don't see too many.
Oh, yeah. You can tweak those ratios so it's more cunning, skill, sensitivity, timing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something amazing because you can continue to tweak that treachery and cunning and ratchet that up as you get older. Up to a certain point. But jiu-jitsu has definitely allowed me to stay competitive with some real studs. Yeah. Even as the gray comes in.
Well, have we killed this bottle of wine?
I think so, man.
Hold on, we have one little sip here. We'll finish.
All right, let's finish this off.
So what's next for you?
I want to do other things. I want to do more collaborative efforts, and I want to make art, with jiu-jitsu, and I'm also heading into this kind of experimental phase with my YouTube channel. I've done plenty of jiu-jitsu media, and now I'd like to do something where I'm just a little more talking head, where I'm discussing topics, and they can be jiu-jitsu, martial arts oriented, or they might be, on other kind of trending topics. But I think being able to express myself through that medium, I think it's time. I feel like I'm ready to share a little bit more with the world, and it can be a creative outlet. If I don't try to control it too much, it could be pretty amazing. The problem is just letting it go and trying different things, and you don't know what's going to hit. You can scheme. Oh, this is going to be amazing. Yeah. Because it checks all the boxes on what's trending, but you never really know.
I write little blog posts and I throw them up on Facebook, and sometimes I'm surprised. The ones that I think are really great, they don't get any likes. Hardly any. And the ones that are just little throwaway things, like 400 people like this. What?
Right. And you don't know what that's going to be. So I'm just going to continue to try to put jiu-jitsu in the best light possible with everything that, with all the media I produce. And I think overall, and you've been a good creative partner over the years.
Back at you, man. I think the universe kind of connected us in a way that, you and I have always had a lot of stuff in common. This, creative sort of impulse to do media and to, you know, and you know, I've been along for the ride, just like you. We've been fellow travelers
on this long and winding road.
And it keeps changing. You know, it's
Absolutely. And I mean, I dreamed that jiu-jitsu would get to this point that it is today, with all these subsections and splinters, and I mean, we should be grateful for our issues and stuff that we bitch about. I'm grateful for all of it. So being able to share the art of jiu-jitsu and live in California and have free time to be able to spend with my family and visit my friends and drink wine with my compadres.
Yeah.
You know, definitely could be worse.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man.
Oh yeah. Thank you, and we'll do it again.